The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Stephen Sakach, again here with my co-host, Mike Liwski, and our special guest today. So a recent McKinsey study found that companies fostering a strong sense of community among employees are 55% more likely to report high engagement and 47% more likely to outperform competitors in customer satisfaction. So connection is not a nice to have, it's a growth driver. Today, we explore how human connection fuels innovation, retention, and resilience in business, and how one company has made community its competitive advantage. Mike, please introduce our special guest today.
Absolutely, Stephen. Looking forward to it. So with us today is Brian Kellerman. He is the CEO of GoGather. And with over 20 years of experience in event strategy and experiential marketing, Brian really helps organizations design gatherings that move people, really not just logistically, but emotionally. And that's a critical component that we're really going to dig into today. And as well, his work transforms meetings into movements. I love that, Brian. And he does that by really creating alignment and belonging that last well past the event, right? Why make this big investment if you're not going to be able to go past the event? So, Brian, we are super eager to hear your insights today. Welcome to our show.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited and grateful for the chance to talk about something that's been really the center of my career for over 20 years now.
Wow.
90, it's sort of hard to believe coming through it. Really, honestly, since school, since college. Funny story, long story. I was a DJ of all things in college. Great way to work your way through college. But that's when I realized sort of the power of connecting people. It was through music at that time, but and of course in great, wonderful environments. But the connections, the bonds that were made, even with me and making friends during those times, really sort of showed me the power of bringing people together. And it was through that career, or that what I thought was going to be a geology career. I got a geology degree, made a mistake, believe it or not. But working my way through school, that made such a strong impact on me. And then I continued to meet friends that were in the hospitality industry, in the production industry, that sort of thing, and realized, oh my goodness, there's this whole sort of industry out here of bringing people together in a really meaningful way. And so that was it. Hit the ground running from there. Was completely fulfilled with everything that we were doing, and went through all kinds of different iterations, whether it was focusing more on production or creative and that sort of thing, and finally landed here at GoGather, which is really sort of the embodiment of all of those different experiences, right? There's no better way to build connections than bringing people together, and it's right there in our name, GoGather. I mean, it's about gathering together to be better than we are as individuals, as a whole. When we're face to face, something deeper happens. As much as I appreciate being here with you all, I can't wait till the three of us are together.
Yeah, till we're face to face, because it's a different connection, right? So what have you learned about building like connection intentionally rather than leaving it to chance? I mean, it's such a huge difference maker, right?
It is, and it's a challenge, because so often we want to go, especially into things like meetings and events, we want to go into it and be very intentional. And of course, that's the idea, and building a strategy around it. But what we found is it's really more about creating environments and moments than having a specific strategy of how to make those connections. No, we need to create an environment where people can feel comfortable, where people can start to break down those personas, those barriers. Even as when we meet somebody for the first time, we kind of have our default sort of go-to. This is Brian meeting you for the first time. Once you get to know me, maybe once we get to have a chance to go fishing or spend some time outside of the office or start to share family connections, that sort of thing, those barriers start to break down, and then we start to build those meaningful connections. And so that's really what we want to focus on, is how can we create shared experiences through spending time together. Of course, we're there to learn. We're there to understand other people's experience. We're there to understand the goals and objectives of our business, that sort of thing. But at the same time, while we're doing that, what are the shared experiences that we can have? And I always push my staff to think back to what were the most impactful things in your life that you remember, in the ways that you made deep, meaningful connections? For me, it was thinking back to things like summer camp from my childhood, or team sports, or school trips, or those big shared meals, family fun, kind of chaotic. Wasn't all organized and perfect. It was a little bit messy and a little chaotic, and there was some laughter and fun to it. And so we really want to humanize those experiences for people. Right? We want to design event environments where, yes, there is that structure, there is those check boxes, those things that we need to get done, but at the same time, there's also that freedom to just be out there and interact and be encouraged to do so.
So, this component, I would say, of events, conferences, different types of gatherings can get overlooked pretty easily, right? As we've sort of stated. So when leaders, they often are focusing on the logistics, who's going to be coming, what are the outcomes, right? Like what this sort of transactional approach maybe to some of these events. And so really underestimating that emotional architecture of the events, kind of, as you mentioned, gets left on the wayside. So like, how do you actually, go through this process, help clients to balance sort of the structure along with having this really human component of it?
That's a great question. And it's a challenge, especially for a lot of stakeholders. I think events often are still treated as almost sort of a commodity, almost an inconvenient part of doing business, something that we have to do. And so therefore, like a lot of things within our businesses, we want to make as efficient and effective and frankly, as inexpensive as possible. And there have even been programs, they're not as prevalent today, but look back 6, 8, 10 years ago, there were big programs within our industry to really commoditize events, really figure out how to do these things efficiently as possible, how to create checklists and structure around every single part of the event there, so that these things could be sort of reported back to procurement or to finance and shown that, okay, we were able to create these sorts of savings. And those things are important, but people don't function like that. We can't put those systems and structures around an experience that a person's going to have like we can in, okay, we need to be as efficient as possible in our office supplies that we're ordering, or even our legal or financial services, those sorts of things. It's different. And so I think the mindset is the first thing that has to shift for those stakeholders. They have to sort of understand that, yes, this is a business expense. Yeah, and we'll talk about this more. Yes, we need to understand the value, the return in doing these sorts of things and have a strategy. But at the same time, we've kind of got to break down those sort of old ideas of, let's turn this into the most efficient and effective and least expensive sort of version of what we can do. And so, again, I go back to really encouraging stakeholders to think about the environment that they want to create. Think about the feeling and the emotion that they want these people to have. Of course, what are the business objectives? Yes, what are the things that we want to accomplish here? But without sort of engaging the individual in that emotion, without sort of understanding or helping them understand why they want to connect with these things, that thing's in one out the other, right? It's just something that you're just listening to. And so if we can help people enjoy themselves, be excited about, even if I'm going to Las Vegas, which I'm in dozens of times a year, I should find something exciting about being there. I'm going to see a coworker. I'm going to hear a keynote that I want to have. I'm going to participate in a unique panel session that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. There's got to be some level of excitement, not the, oh man, I got to go to Vegas again, right? And so we want to give that to people. We want to share with them, hey, we're inviting you to this thing, and here's why we're excited about it. And that's the other thing stakeholders have to realize. Their emotion, their connection, sort of their reaction is infectious. If I'm sitting here as a CEO of an organization and I'm feeling like, oh, this is going to be inconvenient, I've got to leave my wife and kids, which are absolutely true, and I'm sort of just not feeling it, that's going to permeate throughout the organization. Yeah. And so stakeholders have to come with that energy. They have to come with that enthusiasm and that excitement. That again, I'll go back to be like a child, be excited. You're going to get on an airplane. You're going to go to a hotel. You're going to see a cool band. You're going to do all these things. That's awesome. We don't get to do that every day. We don't get to be with 100 or 1,000 of our coworkers and hopefully future friends every day. We're usually by ourselves and kind of, living the normal life. So, sorry, very long answer there.
Yeah. But that rings true, right? Because number one, you're gonna reap what you sow, and so if you're not doing much, then you're just not going to get much out of it. So I'm actually,
Mike, for a second, I see the parallels too with our marketing too, because we always talk about like the marketing. You can talk about the features and benefits of things, right? And that's just sort of the standard sort of marketing. But it's really trying to move beyond that to that emotional connection, because that's where you get the real ROI, you get the real lifetime value with people, is when you can move beyond that. So like you're saying, you could have all these check boxes and everything, and but really it's trying to move beyond that to that emotional connection, because that's where the real ROI, lifetime value is, all the connection and the stats we gave at the top of the show. That's where it exists. So it really becomes kind of this art form when you get to that level of thinking. It's like, how can we do this? So I love seeing the parallels there.
Yeah. I would, go so far as to add, Stephen, in the work that we do with our advertising agency, we can obviously, geofence an event, run ads. Anybody can do that, right? Anybody can run ads to a geofenced event and then stay connected with those devices after, the event. But if you're just going to, run marketing, it's just this, annoyance or nuisance that people want to turn off. You really, if you do it in an elegant way that does create a memorable moment or a connection, then that's what's really lasting. And Brian, I wanted to ask you, because we kind of alluded to it in this question. I know our listeners will be really interested in hearing some of this. So how can that connection be sustained sort of long after the conference, or once the team has gotten together and the gathering ends?
Right. I think that is crucial, right? How do we create these lasting moments? How do we ensure that our events are not just a beginning and an end, and people move on from there? And we need to continue to facilitate throughout, both pre-event, during the event, and post-event, those connections, that communication. And that's where things like technology do help. You and I can't be together today, Mike. I mean, but we're able to utilize this technology. Right. And when we do meet in person, we'll be able to continue to leverage tools like this to continue to this conversation. And so we find that that's key as well, putting people inside of these environments where they're able to make those meaningful connections, but then also be given the tools and the ideas around, this is how we want you to continue to communicate. Let's say, for example, we're doing an incentive program for a client. This has worked actually really well for us over the last 10 years or so. These incentive programs, everybody understands why we're doing them, right? We're doing these to recognize our top performers. These are people that have put in extraordinary amounts of work and had incredible results. And I'm sure you guys can pull up the statistics around this, but 10% of your top performers are responsible for 80 or 90% of your total business, right? And so, of course, we want to recognize those people. But at the same time, we also need to recognize the value in bringing those people together. This is amazing. Now we have literally the top performers in the organization that are responsible for the majority of the success for the organization all together. Imagine the brain power that's there, the experience that's there, when they're able to kind of share and compare notes and sort of talk to each other about what are the things that are working for them. And then not only that, build sort of direct access into those executive level or those leadership roles, where normally, they're not able to interact in that way. And so if we can design a program, and this is what we've done with several of our President's Club or incentive program members, is we'll actually have an executive strategy session once a day. Each executive, if there's 200 people, let's say 200 winners, that is, that are invited to this program, we'll take 10 executives with us. They're hosts. Now, these are executive hosts. These are not, they're not there to participate in the event, although they do. But at the same time, they're there to host. They sit every morning with their 20 people within their group, and those 20 people create a business unit, an advisory group within the organization that now they're able to check in with each other, let's say once a quarter. They would have that direct access into their executive and actually feel like they're not only they recognize for the efforts that they've made within an organization, but they're also now contributing directly to, hey, because of my success, I now get to influence what's happening with stakeholders. Maybe there's a mentorship program that's happening as well now within my group as new people are coming in. As a 2026 or 2025 President's Club member, every time there's a new hire, they're assigned to one of these members that now get to mentor them and bring them along as well, and sort of, again, make meaningful connections and lasting communication that goes beyond the event. And that can be true. That's just an example, of course, of an incentive program, sales kickoff, customer advisory board, all of it, even exhibit and trade show type things. There's so many tactics that can be used.
Yeah, and I love diving into all the tactics and stuff just because this is, we want to bring stuff to our audience that things they can do for their businesses to help them. You're talking about building like this strong internal community within, these companies. And we've seen stats there, like Deloitte says you're going to get a 32% boost in innovation, being able to bring in these, people together and build these strong internal communities. So we often try to pull out, okay, what kind of systems or rituals can you bring to play to help scale connecting inside large organizations? You're kind of talking about it right now, but I'd love to dive into any others as well.
Absolutely. Systems and rituals, tradition, as you said, these are things that we love to build when we're together and in person. Like I said, those executive breakfasts are a way. There could be things like, for us, team building, gamification is still a major win in most events. People, especially, it depends on the event, but we first want to understand what is the demographic, what are the personalities, the people that are going to be involved. And when we're designing these things, making sure that we're sort of considering all types of personalities. There may be people, let's say in the case of gamification, that yes, want to be sort of very athletic, doing a push-up contest or some other feats of strength, as we call them, is a lot of fun. And of course, we want to build a game that includes that sort of thing, but how do we build a game that also maybe includes then some creativity or some, mental challenges, those sorts of things, where teams can sort of be diverse and have a variety of different attributes, let's say, that contribute to their success. And so understanding sort of what sort of rituals, what sort of traditions can we start to build, especially taking advantage of the fact, again, that we're together, right? Let's have some fun. Let's give people permission to break down those barriers and not just make this about, hey, I've got to go to the general session, then after the general session, I go to breakouts, and after breakouts, I go to the evening reception. No, let's break that down a little bit. Give people permission to enjoy themselves and let loose a little bit. And yeah, within your organization, we've worked with some amazing organizations, very, companies that have been in business well over 100 years, and they have things like a jacket presentation. And you've never seen the amount of pride that these people take in being presented with this jacket or with this award. And there's another one. I'll go on a million different tangents, but these ideas of award ceremonies, of course, we want to do that. We want to do awards, but the last thing that we want to do is bore the heck out of everybody with a 3-hour-long awards dinner, right? How do we? Right.
No, you'll go from feats of strengths to airing of grievances, right?
Festivus for the rest of us, of course. So yeah, it's we love that part of it, and then that leads into the storytelling. The storytelling aspect as well, right? The way that we're presenting sort of the information to people is also crucial. This idea that I can get up as the CEO and give a 60-minute keynote and sort of tell everybody this is what we're going to do and why we're going to do it, and you all just need to get on board. It just doesn't work anymore. Like I said, people people want to be inspired, not instructed, right? Look at the popularity of influencers. I'm the same way. I'll run out to the garage and watch 10 different YouTube videos on how to refinish my old car or whatever it is, right? I don't need the instructions. I want the inspiration. I want to be moved to do these things. And the same is true at these events, right? They want the ability to be inspired.
Yeah. I love what Tullio, he'll often say, people want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, of course, that's where the inspiration, will come in. Brian, we oftentimes, work with and on the show, host a number of franchises, and there's always these challenges that they face when it comes to scaling, right? And maintaining that culture and connection and connectivity, the consistency. So I'm kind of wondering, when it comes to in your business and your industry, when it comes to that, at scale, companies tend to risk losing that intimacy that connection really requires. You have to have intimacy in order to form connection. So how is it that leaders can maintain a personal touch as they're growing, or as these events maybe get bigger and bigger and bigger? How is it that they can maintain that personal touch?
Right. Again, very, very awesome question and a major challenge that and what I encourage people to do first is let's be creative in the areas that may not seem to be creative spaces. For example, what does our agenda look like? What does our layout look like? Yeah, when we think about creativity, we immediately want to say, hey, I want the flashiest sort of general session, or the coolest decor, or the best furniture, and those sorts of things are obviously very important. But at the same time, is the old format, just the format that we're looking at, the number of days that we're here, the venues that we're in, are these the things that are going to facilitate and be the catalyst that we need to achieve our objectives? And so franchises is a great example of this. I mean, you have individual business owners, entrepreneurs who are in their own right, stepping away from their business, from their families, to come join peers. They need the ability to connect and collaborate and really sort of understand what is my place within this organization. We're not an employee like I would be at a regular sales conference or that sort of thing, right? There's a lot of autonomy to what they're doing. And so one of again, to get into even a specific tactic, we looked at this idea of the entire layout of a program. This idea that I go to one room for my breakfast meal, and then I go to another room for the general session, and then I go to another room for a breakout, and then maybe there's an exhibit hall, that sort of thing. That's not really the way we work, right? What if we kind of blew all that up? And of course, we need the right space for this, but we just did a community center, a town hall, if you will, right? A town square, rather, and everything was there. This entire event happened in that one space. So when I go, now there's great little networking areas. There's lounge space. There's a coffee cart where I can grab my coffee and sit and relax and maybe watch a demo that's happening right there, unscripted, or unscheduled for me anyway. I just kind of experience these things almost by accident. Right? Again, of course, there is design there. Yeah. But I walk into the space and I have my coffee and I have my meal. And then I walk over and there's we call it the silent disco. It's technology. It's been around forever. I grab a headphone and I listen to my presentation, and I have a Q&A right there. And I don't really need to sort of feel separated constantly from the group. I kind of feel that energy, right, of the entire group at all times. And I can look and sort of choose my own adventure based on what it is that I'm interacting with at that moment. And so, yes, as events grow, there certainly is the ability, especially again, if we go back to this idea that we need to keep everything as systematic and as effective and efficient as possible, then that personal touch is lost. If I'm just sort of moving through that system with 3,000 other people, right, it's so easy just to go, you know what, general session's over. I'm going back to my room. Right. I'm just going to get to work, And honestly, I could have just watched the whole thing online. It didn't really make a difference that I was there in person.
And I think you've got so many employees now too that are working remotely that I think this is even more important to, go gather together, because you don't have that office connection like you used to in a lot of places. It's so fragmented and disconnected that you really have to probably put aside more budget and things like that to make more intention in what you're doing with your team, just because of the nature of how a lot of us are working these days.
Yeah, it certainly has changed in a big way. And like you said, there's so much technology that follows us around. If interest is lost, because again, our interest levels are like that of a goldfish, right? We're told everyone's just going to turn to their phone and check out, or they're going to turn their laptop on and just start doing their work. And that's the exact opposite, which maybe before we get into the next segment around purpose, I did want to ask one other question. Sure. It's always that ROI question. Right. And there's an ROI to an event, but there's actually as well like an ROI to this emotional connection that we have. So Brian, what suggestions do you have, or how is it in your work that you measure the ROI of having an event or initiatives that are connection focused?
Right. And then this is, again, love, you guys have the best questions. This is awesome.
Hard hitting.
A very, very challenging aspect of what we do as well. Right?
For sure.
How do we really quantify, the idea that we've gotten together, right? And I think back to even the days of I'm old, and luckily maybe you guys remember this as well, but I think it was AIG way back in those government bailouts. This is an Orange County thing. They were bailed out by the government, and they went ahead and moved forward with their President's Club, where they bought their top agents out and had a good time there. I believe right there in Orange County, right? And that caught the national media, and boy, that was that was a poop storm, to say the least. Right? And I think that came down to intention. That came down to communication. That was it the right thing for them to do? We can talk for hours about that, right? But these were independent. They're top performers. The 10% of people that were responsible for 90% of their business, they can go elsewhere if they're not well taken care of. And so. But what they needed to do better was sort of define and be specific about what they were doing and why they were doing it. And that's where ROI comes in. It's like, what is our intention, right? And what with this event, and what are the things that we can actually measure through those intentions? Are we looking to reduce turnover? Are we looking to increase engagement, produce or increase brand advocacy? Let's be specific about, because there's a million results to having an event. Of course, there's a million different things that happen, and that's actually the wonderful thing about them. There's all kinds of sort of unintended or sort of naturally happening results from this. But let's be specific going into it. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? That's going to help us then put those measurement metrics in place. Of course, things like Net Promoter Score, old school, just survey. That's still a good way to do it, but let's leverage technology. Audience response is great. It's been around for years and years. But let's text in, what do you think? What do you want to hear the next speaker talk about? Let's see what sort of engagement. Let's use the same sort of engagement tools that you marketers have done such a great job of utilizing throughout your campaigns. A lot of those can be implemented at the event level as well, and just sort of understand if there's an app or those sorts of things. That way we at least have, some sort of quantitative data around what we've done, and then don't forget about the qualitative too. Let's ask people, what do you think? How likely are you to return? Those sorts of things,
for sure. So Brian, let's move into a segment that we love to always talk about with all of our guests, and that is the importance of purpose in conscious capitalism, which we like to follow. It's the main or the first pillar, and in fact, Harvard Business School has been reported to say that purpose-driven organizations are 3 times more likely to retain employees. There's also statistics out there that they outperform 306% of their competitors, but then that's even amongst above satisfied customers, right? And so purpose is this really critical component. So how do you how does purpose, I guess, intersect with connection, with the work that you do there at GoGather? Like what's the importance of purpose? What's its role? And then how do you see it in the work that you do?
I think purpose for us, especially and for most of our clients, I would say most businesses is really comes down to your company culture as well. Right? Or hopefully your purpose drives that company culture. And what we say is we want company culture we want events to be that embodiment, that living, breathing sort of experience of your company culture. And you guys both, I think, mentioned this earlier, this idea that especially now, right, with more and more remote work, those cultures are more and more difficult to sort of maybe even identify, first of all, but grow or cultivate as well. And so events have really become even more crucial. They always have been, but even more crucial in driving that company culture. And so there again, we want to work with stakeholders to understand what are your values. If you're a people first, business, what are the things that drive you, and what are the things that we can actually do, to use the old adage, to put our money where our mouth is. If we're saying that we're people first, and yet we're going to, let's say, a sales kickoff and just driving folks on, you got to sell more, you got to hit these numbers, and you're out of here, boom, 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 boom.
You love those events.
First, you're probably, obviously. And it's possible, to balance those things. And so an example, right? We've gone in and we've seen companies that say, no, we're absolutely people first. And yes, we need to be successful. We're in business. But at the same time, then let's recognize what are the opportunities that we have by bringing this number of people together. How can we leverage that to help to really embody this value? And for example, with people first, maybe it's an idea that, hey, you're going to come here and you're going to learn more about the business, but we're also going to have a health and wellness expert that's on hand that you can go talk to, that'll help you. Or maybe we'll do a meal prep class that helps you understand during a busy work week how you can prep meals and feel better about yourself. Or maybe there are financial challenges that you're having. We have a financial coach that's available to you. And so we start to look at the people as more than just an employee, but the overall individual. And what are the challenges that they're maybe having in their life? A great example was, there again, we're asking people to come away from their families. What sort of care package can we send home? The day they leave, let's have a care package that arrives at their home and says, hey, thanks for allowing mom and dad to step away. Here's a fun little kit for you.
I love that. I mean, because you really do have to consider, this is the talk that they talk, and you want to make sure that your event walks that talk, right? So it really is this kind of art form to take something from a purpose statement and put it into action, into a behavior or something that really reflects that company, right? I love this aspect of kind of really diving into those different elements, like you just mentioned, like a little care package or something like that. If this company is about family or about people, right? And I think you could be probably very creative in those ways to answer that that problem. I love hearing about any more stories or anything like that where you're really being that conscientious about their culture and their purpose.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing. And the effect, I think there are so many stories, but ultimately it comes down to understanding that having a group of people together is actually an opportunity to do amazing and unique things, right? Yes. Even when we think about the idea that if I travel as an individual, there's only so much that I can do as an individual. I can't necessarily go buy out, an amazing, let's say, museum location or historical home, that sort of thing, that I would not normally have this sort of access to, right? And so even the experiences we create for those people, recognizing that, and again, and asking these people to come away, let's be a little more thoughtful than just sticking them in the hotel and sticking them in the general session. And let's figure out what are the things within the area that we're going to that give them a meaningful experience or connection even to the location. Corporate social responsibility is another great one. If you're an organization that supports different charitable organizations, what are the things, even if they're not necessarily local, what are the things that we can do? We work with a bioscience company, and they're, again, on their incentive program. What we did is we assembled science kits for folks, and people had the option to go fishing and snorkeling and all these different amazing activities. Or if you just want to hang out and relax, you could kind of come to this area that was very nice and build these science kits that were going to be donated to the local school children. And that was hugely, in the survey, that was the thing that people talked about. Not this amazing dinner, this incredible band. They're like, it was so cool to put these kits together. And then we had representatives from the local schools come, we reached out to local schools, and then we said, hey, bring your kids that sort of connect with this. And we're going to present this mountain of backpacks that we had made. And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. I mean, people were so thrilled to be able to, just a really small way, to be able to contribute back.
Yeah, a small way. And this is what people really crave, is that meaning in their work. Mm-hmm. And just to be able to bring that meaning into some kind of event. That's why they're saying, yeah, this is my favorite thing that I did. Yeah, these other things could have been fun, but this was pleasurable on a soul level, right? Mm-hmm. This is this higher sort of pleasure. It was, this long lasting thing that we're all searching for. So one question we always ask every guest on this show is some form of, we're talking about care and respect and connection with each other, but we ask, what role does love play in business?
Yeah, a very, very important one in our aspect. I mean, that is the ultimate connection, right? The love for one another, to care for one another, to show that, we are here for one another. We're here to support one another. We're here to share in our success. I mean, even GoGather, gather people, gain success is our tag. There's no better way to be successful than to help others. It's like you said, it's even in that example I gave with that incentive trip. I could be the most successful salesperson within an organization, making millions of dollars a year, and yet the highlight of my year was giving a $10 backpack to a needy kid in an amazing location. And so for us, that's what drives it. I think it's tough. Love is, you guys tell me, love is a scary word, I think, in business for some people. Yeah. They hear it, whoa, hold on.
We heard that, yeah.
Yeah, we know it. That's why we're talking about it. We're trying to make it less scary.
Right. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it's a deep part of who and what we are, our faith as well, and the ability to be out there and, again, share that love, share the joy, share the excitement, the fun, really just all of those positive emotions and feelings that come along with being together. I mean, it's so easy to, especially in this day and age, to go down that rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, the world's falling apart. This is horrible. Everybody is against me, or it's just, if it just wasn't for those other half of people, then everything would be great. And all of that, just the minute people are together, it falls away. I mean, we've seen people from dozens of different countries and cultures and races and ethnicities come together, and you would have thought there wasn't a care in the world just for those 3 or 4 days, right? And that's what's meaningful, and that's what people need to remember, and that's the opportunity and the responsibility that we have here is that we can show, as bad as it might seem, as gloomy as it might seem, we can show people that hope, that joy, that love, for sure.
Yeah. Without a doubt, yeah, we would say it, like you said, it does have a very important role, and we would also say it's probably an underused term in business as well. So, yeah, being one of those organizations that is really trying to help people build love in the work that they do. So, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I was actually, as I was going through the show and hearing all this, I was like, oh my goodness, there's just this wealth of insight about building community and getting people together. Now, for those that want to learn a little bit more about GoGather or yourself as well, on the work that you're doing with the experiences that you create, where would you like them to go to connect with you?
GoGather.com is the way to do it. We're on all the socials, but yeah, as you can tell, I love talking about this sort of stuff. Yeah. Right? There's nothing more exciting to me than seeing my calendar filled up with just conversations about, hey, we've got this coming up, or we've got this idea. What do you think about this? You know, when it gets down, thankfully, we've got an amazing team of planners and logistics minded people and creative folks that can help take all of these crazy ideas and turn them into reality. But my job is to inspire, is to collaborate and do those things. And so I love it. I love when young people reach out to me. I love when CEOs reach out and they just want to have a conversation about, hey, maybe, I mean, I have several a week about how do I even get into this business, or what's this business like, versus how do I leverage, all the way to how do I leverage this to become more successful in my Fortune 500 organization. So GoGather.com, hit us up on the social medias, all those sorts of things. And yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you both. I found this very inspiring. As you can see, I'm coming away with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and that's what it's all about.
That is.
Exactly. Brian, thank you for joining us. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And as Brian alluded to, I mean, very disconnected time right now. And, you know, we're also, you know, not just in the workplace working remote, but just in society. The more we can kind of make connection a goal and bring people together, the better we will be. So if today's conversation inspired you to prioritize connection in your organization, please share this episode with your team, and we'll see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.
See you, everybody.